Being consistent is the single most important trait to have when looking to improve at World of Warcraft. So what are the specifics of being consistent? Being in a raid to kill a boss is the first major mistake a lot of players make. The raid has been designed so that the bosses die. Our goal should be to learn, understand, and overcome the variety of challenges that each new boss presents us, the end result being the boss dying and us adding more power to our character. Your job as an individual is to ensure that you are streamlining the process to acquiring loot and progressing your character, which brings us to the first major point of consistency: not dying. If you die once to a mechanic or a specific scenario in a raid, ask yourself questions immediately and find the answer to how do I ensure this death doesn't happen again. Where did I die? How did I die? What could I have done differently? Even when you are not at fault for the death, ask yourself these questions. Our first handful of pulls on a brand new boss we have no experience with should be all about learning. Most of the time, we shouldn't expect the boss to just fall over. Instead, we should be using these first handful of pulls to learn how to best utilize our class's toolkit in the encounter. Do not worry about killing the boss. This means testing things like what debuffs or abilities can or cannot be removed or blocked with immunities. Figuring out where it's best to use defensive and offensive cooldowns during the fight. As a mage, for example, you should be able to figure out or know that during the Wrathion fight, you can ice block when the fire is covering the entirety of the room, allowing you to be right next to the boss for an extra 7 seconds DPSing the boss compared to everybody else in the raid. As a warlock, you should always be finding the most optimal place for both your gateway and your demonic circle in every single fight. The next step in being consistent is to take what information we learn from the first few pulls of a new boss and turn that into a consistent strategy. So the first thing we need to do when developing a consistent strategy is to be predictable to those around us. So what I mean by this is positioning. The first step to all of this is positioning. It's always thinking about where we are in relation to other people in the raid, especially as you get into higher difficulties of content. The more hectic things become when people are running all over the place, not knowing where to go. So this is where we want to always develop on any boss fight that requires some kind of positioning mechanic or something where the whole raid needs to spread out or things like this. Just in general, you want to have consistent places where you are standing and doing mechanics every time in the same spot. So for instance, on Anduin on Mythic, I literally always started the pull by this green marker. I played by this green marker, and then whenever the marks would come out, I would be in this general area near the green marker. That way, over time, people will just, even if you don't say anything and other people don't say anything, people will just get used to you standing there, and they will know there is a person over here, so I need to be in this other spot. And people will, if everybody is doing it, it falls into this really nice thing where within a couple pulls of a new boss, everyone will just have their spots to do things. And it makes the fight so easy because everybody is being able to predict where everyone else is going to be during things. And there's no chances of people crashing into each other or going to the same spot and then being confused or all these different things that can happen. So being consistent in where you position yourself is a huge benefit to everybody. It's not just you. So it's absolutely beneficial. And here's like another example, which is why I'm still playing it. When these new marks come out, look where I immediately go to. So the marks are coming out. I'm running right back over towards my area on green. And if anyone was closer to me at that point, I would have scooted even more towards green, but the idea remains the same. I'm going to my general spot, and that is where I'm staying every time that mark mechanic happens, is I'm over there. So that is the first like major example of something that you want to do when building a consistent strategy, is being predictable in where you're going and what you're doing during the fight. Try to make it as choreographed as possible, because all the fights, most of the fights in World of Warcraft are scripted, so everything keeps happening the same way. So when you wipe, you're just redoing the fight exactly as it was when you wiped. So you just do everything the exact same and then just change up what happened with, you know, why you wiped. And then but you don't change anything before that because you made it to a certain point in the fight successfully. So you shouldn't change any of that because it all worked. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is what I mean by being proactive and planning at least one step ahead. So with this, you should always assume that you are going to get the mechanic. So whatever mechanic is coming up, whatever things happen in the fight, you should always be ready and assuming that you are going to be the one targeted 100% of the time. Play as if you are going to be targeted and there's no other option. And so this comes back to the positioning thing. You should find ways to position so that you are ready for that mechanic and you are already planning in your head what steps you're going to take to deal with that mechanic. So a really good example is Ashvane and Old Fight, an oldie but goodie. In this fight, we would mark these coral. So you can see there's a red marker next to this coral, there's a green marker next to this one, and a blue marker next to this one. And the way that the fight works is a total of 6 players get paired together, and they will, so it's 3 pairs of players. They will get a red marker, a green marker, or a blue marker pair, and those pairs need to break the corresponding coral that we marked. So like the 2 players who get marked with the red markers need to break the coral closest to red. The 2 players with green need to break green, and the 2 players with blue need to break blue. The thing is you can be targeted by any of the colors. So you don't know which color you are going to get. So where would you want to position if you're going to assume that you're going to have to break one of these corals? You would probably want to be somewhere in the middle of all 3, right? Because then you have the least amount of distance to travel no matter which one you get targeted by. So a good example of this is a player that I'm going to point out who gets targeted. So look where this mage is back here in the back. This is perfect positioning and perfect examples of being proactive about having a mechanic. So the mage is sitting here. He gets blue. Blue is right over here. He's in the middle of all 3. So what is he going to do when he gets blue? Look how fast he gets over to this coral. He's here. Blinks, he's back on the boss, attacking the boss. He doesn't have to do any running around. He doesn't have to do any more thinking because he already thought it through before it happened. He said, I'm going to stand here no matter which one I get targeted by. It's just within blink distance and a few steps, and then I can be back on the boss. And he doesn't have to worry about figuring out where his partner is. He doesn't need to worry about all these things because it's just as simple as, oh, I got blue, blink over, stand in the way of it. There we go. So that is a good example of being proactive. Now I will show you a very bad example of being proactive, or, rather not being proactive. So here we mark it with X. So what we do with this one, or what we were doing, is because all 3 markers go out, but we only need to break these 2 coral, we just have whoever gets targeted by red is going to break both of these. So that means one player stands on the on this side, and one player needs to stand on the other side, and then a beam goes between you and your partner, and that's what breaks the coral, just to specify. So this is pretty far from the boss. If you're a melee player, you need to be aware that you might have to run far, but hopefully you get a ranged partner and they can be the one to go far. But that's the thing, is if you're a ranged player, where do you want to be positioning with this? If if the raid leader says, hey, if you get red, you're breaking, blue and green stand still, then I'm going to go, okay, well, I'm going to get targeted by red. Because remember, we're going to assume we always get the mechanic. So we should assume that we are going to be the person who has to break these 2 coral. So where is the best place to position? Probably somewhere right around here where we are just in distance to still hit the boss, but we are within, a 1 ability use or some kind of movement ability to get to where we need to go to break this coral. But what ends up happening is you have all these players who are nice and in good positions, and then where's this little mage? That's not a very good spot. That's like 2 blinks and some running to do, and you're in the middle of a combust. So it's going to be really unfortunate if you get targeted by the red one, isn't it? We'll wait until it goes off. Here it comes in just a couple seconds. And let's see who gets red. Okay, we have blue, blue, green. So all the people in good positioning are not the ones who need to break this. The people, look at the 2 people targeted by red. Way over here in the corner. And now look how far they have to run, because they're both range DPS. Look how far they need to go to break this coral. They're sprinting, 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 sprinting. Now they stopped. So that was all that downtime that they didn't get to attack the boss or do anything because they had to just full book it over to try to make it in time. And that's why if all they had to do was just be positioned over here to begin with, if they were just standing here with us, it's just, they're literally attacking the boss still, attacking the boss still, attacking the boss still. Now they can move and get in position and still have plenty of time. And now they're attacking the boss again, rather than sprinting across the entire room to try to get to where they need to go because they didn't think about themselves getting the mechanic. They were kind of just hoping that they didn't get it. So that's like the first, that's like the major point that I'm trying to make here is never hope that you don't get the mechanic or assume that you're not going to get it. Always just assume you're going to get it. And then if you don't get it, okay, that's fine. You just keep DPSing the boss. If you do get it, awesome. You're in the perfect position to deal with it and you already know what you're going to do. So being proactive is incredibly important in raiding, and it will make such a big difference in making you an outstanding player. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I am super excited to get this series going, especially as we approach Dragonflight. So let me know what other kind of topics you would like me to talk about. I have some in mind, but for now we're just going to kind of keep rolling these out. And if there's anything specific that you'd like me to cover or you have more questions, please let me know down in the comments or in our Discord, which the link to our community Discord's in the description. See y'all later.